Unit 16, page 272. Pronunciation note. In sentences with focus adverbs, the word following the focus adverb normally has the strongest stress in the sentence.
Even I like the cold weather. I even like the cold weather. Only teenagers can attend. Teenagers can only attend.
Unit 16, page 276. Exercise 7. 1.
Bill can't even understand this math.
2.
Even Bill can understand this math.
3.
I just don't agree with Nancy.
4.
I just don't agree with Nancy.
5.
We don't even like this food.
6.
Even we don't like this food.
7.
Only women can visit this club.
8.
Women can only visit this club.
Unit 16, page 278. Exercise 9. Listening.
Good evening, and welcome to Sound Off, the international talk show where you express your uncensored opinions on today's controversial issues. I'm your host, Mike McAfee. Tonight's topic is capital punishment. Most European countries have abolished it, and some states in the United States have as well. There definitely seems to be a growing movement worldwide to get rid of it. So where do you stand on this issue? Here's tonight's first caller, Jack Chu, who was born in Beijing. Go ahead, Jack. How do you feel about the death penalty?
Good evening, Mike. I'm in favor of it overall. We have it back in China, and I think it serves its purpose.
All right, Jack, but what is its purpose? And how do you respond to those who say it's a barbaric practice that has no place in the modern age?
Mike, its purpose is clearly to dispense justice. Certain crimes are so terrible that they demand the ultimate form of punishment. As for the comment that the death penalty is a barbaric custom that is outdated today, I'll say this. Those with that view seem to think people have somehow gotten better and more civilized. No way do I believe that. Human nature doesn't change. We're as uncivilized, or as civilized, today as we were thousands of years ago. Just as an example, I read about a recent murder case in another country where a man was convicted of killing everyone in a family, but he didn't even receive a 10-year sentence in prison.
Okay. Now, Jack, you said earlier that you're in favor of the death penalty overall. Does that mean that you support it for only certain crimes?
Yes, that's correct. Basically, I support capital punishment just for capital crimes, for first-degree murder, for kidnapping, and for betraying your country.
Okay. I take your overall point, but let me just play devil's advocate here. What about the idea that capital punishment takes away any possibility of rehabilitation? Shouldn't we try to rehabilitate criminals and help them to become useful members of society?
Mike, I'm certainly for rehabilitation in some circumstances, but not everyone can be rehabilitated. Some just go back to their evil ways. Obviously, capital punishment is the only way to make sure that evil people can't commit more crimes. Hopefully, people will realize this, and capital punishment will continue to exist.
Wow. Okay, Jack, thanks for your comments. Something tells me we're going to be hearing from plenty of people who disagree with you, and from plenty of people who are in your camp. All right, we'll get to our next caller after this commercial message.
Unit 17, page 282. Read.
Are sports still sporting? As I write this editorial, preparations for the 2016 Summer Olympics are in full swing in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. This international competition seems likely to be a big success, with 206 countries expected to participate in the first games ever to be played in South America. The 2012 Summer Games in London, England, and the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi, Russia, were artistic triumphs. The popularity of sports worldwide continues to rise. But while sports may look good on the surface, problems lurk underneath. For one thing, there's a vast overemphasis on fame and the worshiping of famous athletes. Then there's the increasingly large role money is playing in sports today, since there are ever-increasing possibilities for product endorsement by athletes. Finally, sports violence has certainly not diminished. In April of 2013, for example, a coach in an amateur soccer game in Salt Lake City was punched in the face by a player because he had penalized that player. The coach later died from the injury. What is wrong? I've concluded that the whole sports scene is in need of repair and have identified 3 major excesses. First excess: misplaced focus on fame. When the Olympics began about 2,700 years ago in Greece, the contests were derived from war. The javelin throw, for example, paralleled the throwing of a spear in a battle. Running paralleled the physical exertion you might have to make if an enemy was chasing you. When the modern Olympic Games started in 1896, the philosophy had shifted to the promotion of peace. However, emphasis was still placed on demonstrating physical stamina and excellence in challenging contests. How things have changed. Although athletes still try to achieve their personal best, the focus has shifted to the breaking of records and the achievement of fame. Can we really say that someone who finishes the 400-meter freestyle swim 1/10 of a second ahead of his or her nearest rival is a champion, while that rival is an also-ran? Second excess: money. Consider the cost of attending a major athletic competition. In the United States, the average cost of a ticket to a National Football League game in 2015 was about $84. If you add up the cost of taking a family of 4 to a game, the total was over $440. A ticket to an NBA basketball game is about $52. Baseball is cheaper, though it's not really a bargain at an average ticket cost of about $30. I wondered why tickets are so expensive until I remembered the key factor: players' salaries. NBA basketball star LeBron James earns about $23 million a year. Baseball player Alex Rodriguez made about $22 million in 2015. Is anyone worth that much money? Meanwhile, the President of the United States earns $400,000 a year. And U.S. public school teachers make a median yearly salary of about $53,000. We can infer a lot about what we value by looking at what we pay people. When we compensate professional athletes so highly, are we rewarding the people who are truly valuable to society? Third excess: prevalence of violence. We see it wherever we look, and it's certainly not decreasing. Fights occur frequently in professional sports, with ice hockey one of the worst offenders. In one of the best-known cases, for instance, NHL player Steve Moore had to be hospitalized because another player hit him in the head with his hockey stick. Unfortunately, there seems to be increasing acceptance of violence as just part of the game. But once we assume violence is inevitable, it will be almost impossible to stop. This sort of thing doesn't just happen in North America. We've all heard about the well-publicized violence surrounding soccer games in Europe. In another example that occurred in December of 2012, a Dutch amateur linesman was beaten to death after a youth match concluded. Sports have enormous potential to benefit society, but somehow, in becoming big business entertainment, They have gone awry. What to do? Well, we can pay more attention to local athletics and events such as the Special Olympics. We can refuse to pay ridiculously high ticket prices. We can demand an end to violence. Above all, we need to get back to this idea. It's not whether you win or lose. It's how you play the game.
Unit 17, page 293. Exercise 6. Listening.
Thanks for tuning in to Sports Talk, all you listeners out there. I'm Mary Mobley, and today we're talking with Lillian Swanson, champion swimmer, whose team Jamaica just won the World Championship. Lillian will be participating in the upcoming Olympics as part of the Jamaican national team. Lillian, thanks so much for being here with us.
Thanks for having me, Mary.
There are a million questions I could ask, Lillian, but I'll start with this one. From all appearances, you've had a charmed athletic career. To what do you attribute your success?
Well, Mary, whenever I've been asked that question, I've always answered it in the same way. It was because my parents loved and supported me.
Okay, tell us more. How did it all happen?
It started when I was a girl in Jamaica. I learned to swim when I was 4. I swam in the Caribbean, and swimming wasn't such a big deal. It's the most natural thing in the world in Jamaica. I think I became a good swimmer because I had to swim in the Caribbean, which is a lot more difficult to swim in than a pool.
Who taught you to swim?
My parents. My family and I spent a lot of time at the beach since we didn't have many toys or video games or things like that.
What did you mean when you said that your parents supported you?
Well, when I was 12, I decided I wanted to become a champion swimmer and go to the Olympics someday. My parents said they'd pay for lessons and training if I would stick to my plan and practice regularly. So I did. That's why I'm grateful to my parents. After I started swimming seriously, I became a better person in so many ways.
In what ways? Can you say a bit more about that?
Sure. Even though everyone knows that there are a lot of physical benefits to sports, fewer people know that they also have psychological benefits. Sports can help kids build their character and become disciplined. Swimming helped me to develop these qualities. Whenever kids play sports, they achieve more, connect with other people, and improve their self-esteem. They learn to care about others. They're able to do all these things because they have to play on a team, listen to the coach, learn how to deal with both winning and losing, and especially train a lot.
Okay, very well said, Lillian. Now, 12 is pretty young to make a decision like the one you made. Didn't you ever get tired of practicing all the time? And didn't you ever get discouraged?
Sure. I got tired of practicing lots of times. And yes, I got discouraged whenever I had a hard time learning a new stroke.
Any regrets?
None at all. Because swimming is a total passion for me. I can't imagine myself doing anything else. But I owe it all to my parents.
Well, Lillian, thanks very much for talking with us. And good luck in the Olympics.
Thanks. My pleasure.
Unit 18, page 298. Read.
Compassion. It was the evening of September 29th, 1994. Having spent a wonderful day exploring the ruins at Paestum in southern Italy, Reg and Maggie Green were driving south in the region of Italy known as the Boot, their children Nicholas and Eleanor sleeping peacefully in the back seat. Suddenly, an old, decrepit car pulled up alongside them. An Italian with a bandana over his face yelled at them while motioning for them to stop. Not knowing what to do, Reg quickly weighed the options. If they stopped, they risked a potentially deadly confrontation with criminals. If they sped away, they might escape.
Guessing that their newer model car could probably elude the old car the criminals were driving, Reg stepped on the gas. Shots rang out, shattering both windows on the driver's side of the car. The Green's car took off, easily outdistancing the bandits' car. On checking the children, Reg and Maggie found them still sleeping peacefully in the back seat. A bit farther down the road, Reg saw a police car parked on the shoulder and pulled over to alert the authorities. Upon opening the door, he saw blood oozing from the back of Nicholas's head. After being rushed to a hospital, Nicholas lay in a coma for 2 days, his status not changing. Then doctors declared him brain dead. This was not the end of the story, however. As Nicholas lay on his deathbed, Reg and Maggie decided that something good should come out of the situation. Realizing that it would be far better to return good for evil than to seek revenge, they offered Nicholas's organs for transplant. Someone should have the future he lost, Reg said. Profoundly moved by the gesture, Italians poured out their emotions. Maurizio Costanzo, the host of a talk show, summed up the common feeling by saying, "You have given us a lesson in civility, shown us how to react in the face of pain and sorrow." The great irony of this tragedy was that it was a mistake. According to investigators' later determinations, Nicholas was killed by 2 petty criminals who thought the Greens were jewelers carrying precious gems. The criminals were placed on trial after being turned over to the police. People all over Europe and North America reacted in sorrow. Headlines in the Italian media spoke of La nostra vergogna, our shame. Wherever the Greens went, they met Italians who asked for their forgiveness. The Greens were given a medal, Italy's highest honor, by the Prime Minister. Some good has indeed come out of Nicholas's death. 7 Italians received Nicholas's heart, liver, kidneys, islet cells, and corneas. Perhaps more importantly, a blow was struck for organ donation. Having heard Reg and Maggie speak on TV, 40,000 French people pledged to donate their organs when they died. On returning to the United States, the Greens began to receive requests to tell their son's story and speak about organ donation. It gradually dawned on us, said Reg, that we'd been given a life's work. Nicholas Green is gone, but others live on because of his parents' compassionate act. How many of us would do the same thing, given the opportunity?
Unit 18, page 310. Exercise 6. Listening.
Good afternoon. This is the latest news from the World Broadcasting Network. The ceasefire has been broken in Franconia. Asked whether he would attend next week's peace conference in Geneva, rebel leader Amalde declined to commit himself, saying that the success of the conference depended on the good faith actions of Mr. Tintor, the country's president. Having refused to release any rebel prisoners of war, Mr. Tintor has shown that he does not really want peace, according to Mr. Amalde. Interviewed about Mr. Amalde's comments, an aide to President Tintor, speaking off the record, said he did not expect the conference to take place as scheduled. Meanwhile, researchers from the Global Health Foundation announced plans to test a new vaccine for AIDS. Acknowledging that the current vaccine is ineffective, the researchers claim that their new vaccine is a marked improvement on the existing one. They believe that it holds great promise. A new nation comes into existence at midnight tonight. To be known as the Central Asian Republic, the new nation has been carved out of the eastern portion of Spartania. After declaring the nation's independence, one of the new government's first actions was to request billions of dollars in foreign aid. Finally, here is today's human interest story. In St. Louis, Missouri, 16-year-old Sam Michaels was saved from drowning in a swimming pool by 12-year-old Carrie Hutchinson. Being unable to swim, Michaels had almost given up hope of being rescued. Upon hearing his cries for help, Hutchinson located him and jumped into the water. Then she pulled him to safety using the life-saving techniques she had learned in swimming classes. Michaels, grateful for the rescue, thanked Hutchinson profusely and said he planned to start swimming lessons immediately. That's the latest news from World Broadcasting. Stay tuned for further developments.
Unit 19, page 315. Read.
Try to remember. You're with a friend, and suddenly up walks somebody you've known for a long time. You want to introduce this person to your friend. However, just as you say, "Nancy, I'd like you to meet," your mind goes blank and you don't remember the person's name. It's embarrassing and worrisome enough to make you want to do something about it. If this has happened to you, though, don't be too concerned. It's a common problem. As people get older, they tend to become more forgetful. They can't remember everyday details like computer passwords, email addresses, and their friends' names. I used to worry about memory loss myself. Therefore, I decided to do some research into the problem, and I learned a number of interesting things about memory and how it works. I also discovered that even though memory loss is probably unavoidable, there are things you can do to slow it down. How does memory work? First of all, there are two types of memory, long-term and short-term. Long-term memory refers to our memories of things that we experienced some time ago and that form the core of our knowledge of ourselves. In contrast, short-term memory can be called working memory, the type we use in processing such things as passwords and the names of new people we meet. As we grow older, our long-term memory holds up remarkably well. Thus, we are able to remember the highlight of the vacation we took to the Everglades at the age of 10 and the alligators we saw there. Meanwhile, our short-term memory tends to deteriorate. We have difficulty remembering things like where we put our house keys because our short-term memory fails us. Why does short-term memory decline? Short-term memory operations occur in the frontal lobes of the brain. As people age, these lobes tend to lose mass, as much as 5 to 10% per decade. Short-term memory operations require space in order to function correctly. Therefore, as the lobes become smaller, short-term memory gets worse. It is difficult or impossible to completely avoid memory decline. However, it can be slowed. Maintaining a steady supply of glucose can mitigate the problem of shrinking lobes. Consequently, elderly people would do well to eat several small meals each day rather than 2 or 3 big ones. There is evidence, moreover, that staying mentally active can help sustain our memory and keep it from deterioration. Many companies feed on our fears of memory loss, and they attempt to induce us to buy products that will supposedly enhance our ability to remember. Do these products work? Well, sometimes. But it's important to keep in mind that all memory aids depend on the creation of a peg, or mental picture, on which to hang something we want to recollect. Suppose, for example, you have difficulty remembering names. Let's say you're at a party and are introduced to a woman named Sarah Bayer. First, look for distinguishing features. You see that Sarah has long, thick hair, rather like a bear's fur. Second, think of words that will help you associate these features with this person. Bayer equals bear. Furthermore, the first syllable of Sarah rhymes with bear. Sare and bear. It might work. The point is to create a mental picture you can relate to the person, place, or thing you want to recall. The more vivid the association is, the greater is the chance that you'll remember it. Most importantly, memory improvement takes work. The real problem in remembering something we learned is often the fact that we weren't paying enough attention when we learned it. Think about the last time you were introduced to someone whose name you immediately forgot. Were you really paying attention to the person's name, or were you focusing on the impression you might be making? Memory courses can work, of course, but they depend on techniques we can create and perform for ourselves. The real trick lies in our willingness to tap and use what's within us.
Unit 19, page 327. Exercise 6. Listening.
All right, folks, we're ready to start part 2 of the workshop. Let's just review the points we made before. As you know, it's crucial to be able to remember and use clients' names. Clients like to be called by their names, so it's good business. That's why it's so important to get people's names into your short-term memory. How do you do this? First, be sure to say people's names out loud when you meet them. Second, make sure that you notice one particular thing about each person and link that thing with the person's name. For example, suppose the person has strong, prominent eyebrows. And suppose the person's name is Ed. You can link the E in eyebrows with the E in Ed, and then you have an easier... Yes, may I help you?
Yes, my name is Kiyoki Kendall.
Excuse me, Mr. Kendall, but we're in the middle of a workshop here, and I'd really like to...
I won't keep you long. I'm from the University Police. I want everyone to stand up. Quick, everyone. Some money has been stolen from the financial office, and I need to inspect your belongings. Please empty your purses and backpacks and your pockets onto your desks. Thank you. You have all been very cooperative. You may put your things away now. Thank you. Aloha.
What in the world was that about?
Come on, you guys. He wasn't for real.
What? Are you kidding?
Didn't you notice? He wasn't in uniform. Besides, Marcia, you didn't really act like this was a real interruption, so this must have all been planned.
Yes, Mike, you're right. It was all planned. But I'll bet he had you going for a minute, right, Bob?
I'll have to admit that he did.
All right. The question is what you got out of the experience. Let's see what you remember. How was he dressed?
He had on a suit, a tuxedo actually, but he wasn't wearing a white shirt.
Okay, good. What color was his shirt? No one remembers? All right. What about his shoes?
Brown?
Sorry, as a matter of fact, they were black. What was his name?
I think his first name was Kiyoki?
That's right. Very good. Now, why do you think you were able to remember that name?
Well, it's an unusual first name, except maybe in Hawaii.
Good. Now, what was his last name?
I think it was Kendall. I don't think I would have remembered it except for the fact that you repeated it when you said, "Excuse me, Mr. Kendall."
Right. Excellent. Now, what was the last word he said?
Aloha.
Very good. Why were you able to remember it?
Well, it's not the usual way to say goodbye. Almost everyone knows the word, of course, but people don't say it that much.
Right. Okay. Now let's just sum up the points here. You were able to remember some of the particulars about our visitor, but not all of them. It's true that you were distracted. That was deliberate. But, most importantly, if you're going to improve your memory and use it well, you're going to have to learn to focus your attention consistently. You were able to remember the unusual things, and that's a good start. But it's the ordinary things you have to work on. You have to pay attention to those things, too.
Unit 20, page 334. Read.
Does it matter when you were born? Let's see if you can answer this question. There are two men, one named Sam and the other named Jerry. They're quite similar. Sam is a perfectionist, and so is Jerry. Jerry, always a high achiever, was president of his high school class. So was Sam. Neither man went to college, though both did become successful businessmen. Jerry has always been an innovator. This has made him a leader in most of his enterprises, just like Sam. Sam always tries to obey rules. Jerry does too. Jerry has never liked liberal ideas, nor has Sam. The question is why they are so similar. Wait, you say. I know what the explanation is. They're identical twins. That's why they're so similar. Sorry, but that isn't it. They're not twins or even related to each other, but they are both firstborns. Sam and Jerry are examples of what researchers call the birth order theory. According to this theory, the order in which children are born plays a significant role in the formation of their personalities and in the way they ultimately turn out. Does this sound like some crazy new idea? It isn't. It's been around for a while. The main idea behind the birth order theory is simple. Firstborn children enjoy a special relationship with their parents simply because they were there before any other children were. When other children come along, firstborns understand that these new arrivals represent a challenge to their special relationship. For this reason, firstborns tend to be conservative, rule-oriented, and opposed to change. They want to keep things as they are. Other children in the family have a different challenge. They must somehow adapt to the family dynamic and find a niche in their parents' affections. They sense that they have to become different from the oldest child, so they do. They learn to do whatever helps them establish their own identity. One of the main supporters of the birth order theory is Frank Sulloway, a researcher who did a 26-year study of about 7,000 famous people in history and then performed a computer analysis. What he learned from the analysis led him to develop his theory that first, middle, and lastborns have very different characteristics. It is evident that firstborns are usually self-confident, assertive, and conscientious. They can also be jealous, moralistic, and inflexible. Winston Churchill, John Wayne, Oprah Winfrey, Saddam Hussein, and Joseph Stalin were all firstborns. Based on this idea, we might expect powerful political figures, such as U.S. presidents, to be firstborns. They often are, says Sulloway. Sulloway observes that lastborns are usually more social, agreeable, and open to new and even revolutionary ideas. This is because, sensing the power of the already established relationship between the oldest sibling and the parents, they have to turn outward to establish their place in the world. Famous lastborns include Joan of Arc, Thomas Jefferson, and Leon Trotsky. What about families in which there are more than 2 children? If there are 3 children in a family, the middle child is usually more flexible than the other 2 and often has a talent for compromise. Famous middle children include Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King Jr., and Jennifer Lopez. A family in which there is only 1 child is the least predictable configuration, Sulloway says. An only child isn't as inflexible as a firstborn. The fact that they are the sole child in the family, however, causes only children to identify with their parents as firstborns do. Perhaps you're thinking this is all just too much of a generalization. That there are exceptions to the birth order theory is clear. A child's temperament has a great deal to do with how he or she turns out. Shy children, for example, may not become leaders even if they are firstborns. Sulloway notes that there have been famous firstborns who became revolutionaries, as well as laterborns who became conservatives. Still, the theory of birth order is compelling, even if its accuracy is controversial. If we assume that there is some validity to the birth order theory, how can parents achieve the best possible relationships with their children? What they should do, Sulloway says, is give each child unique time and attention. Whether or not they can significantly change the influences of birth order is an open question, but they will maximize the quality of those relationships.
Unit 20, page 347. Exercise 6. Listening.
Good afternoon. I'm Maxine Bundy. I guess you're Mr. and Mrs. Lamont?
Yes, I'm Tim Lamont, and this is my wife, Anne.
I'm glad to meet you both. Now, I believe you're here because of a problem with your daughter?
Yes, that's right.
What seems to be the problem?
Well, our daughter Amanda seems sad and depressed. She's been crying a lot.
Do you have other children?
Yes, we have an older child, a boy who's 17, and a younger child, a boy who's 12. Amanda is the middle child. She's 15.
How long has this problem been going on?
It started about 2 months ago. We asked Amanda why she was so unhappy. She burst into tears and said, "We don't care about her." That came as a shock. We love her dearly.
Yes, we just can't understand how she could think that.
Tell me about your other children. Do they seem happy?
Yes, definitely. Brad, our older boy, is involved in a lot of activities. He's on the school football team, and he's an excellent student. It seems like whatever he does, he's really successful at it.
And Jim, our younger son, is involved in a lot of activities too. He's a really good musician, and he's also on a soccer team.
And what about Amanda? Tell me what she's involved in.
Well, not much of anything, really. We've tried to get her to take part in sports or music, but she never seemed interested.
How much time have you spent with Amanda lately?
Not much, really. We just can't seem to get her involved in anything.
I think I'm beginning to see what the issue might be. This sounds like a case of the missing middle child.
What do you mean?
Well, it's often the case that middle children sort of get lost in the shuffle. Oldest children usually just do their own thing and are successful at it. They get a lot of attention from their parents. Younger children, because of where they are in the family structure, also find their own niche pretty easily. Normally, they also get a good deal of attention. It's the middle child who sometimes feels neglected.
Neglected? But
I don't mean deliberately neglected. It often just turns out that way.
If that's the case with Amanda, what can we do?
Well, I'd like to see Amanda individually and talk with her. But for now, I'd suggest that you try to give her a lot of special attention. Don't try to get her interested in something that you think of. Let her discover on her own what she's interested in, and then support that as much as you can.
Well, can you help us with this?
Yes. It will take work, but it will be well worth your effort. Now, when can I see Amanda?
Unit 21, page 352. Read.
Understanding Misunderstandings. Hello, everyone. I'm Ann Ness. Please welcome today's guest, communication expert Ellen Sands.
Thanks for having me. You know, Anne, I think we're seeing a lot more verbal conflict these days than in the past. There seems to be a lot more rancor and a lot less civility. Today I want to talk about ways to avoid verbal conflict, or at least minimize it.
Sounds good, Ellen. Tell us more.
All right. First, people need to listen actively to each other. We hear things, but often we don't really listen. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a restaurant in Los Angeles, sitting near an Indian couple being served by an American waitress. The service was slow, and the couple seemed distressed. When the waitress brought the check, the man said, "The bill seems very high. Did you include the service in it? How much is the service?" The waitress said, "You have to pay the tax." The man said, "The service was very slow. We have never waited so long to be served. We will pay the bill, but we won't pay for service." Then they left angrily. The waitress just glared at them and didn't say anything. It wasn't a good situation, mainly because the waitress didn't listen actively.
Let me see if I understand. When the waitress brought the check, the man said the bill seemed very high. He asked how much the service was. The waitress said they had to pay the tax. The man said the service had been very slow and they had never waited so long to be served. He said they would pay the bill, but they wouldn't pay for service. Now, what did the waitress do wrong?
She didn't listen carefully. The man asked if she had included the service in the bill. Unfortunately, she never answered his question. That was the key thing he wanted to know.
Did she do anything else wrong?
She didn't address his concern about the slow service. She could have said something like, "Yes, I'm really sorry about the service. We're short-handed today."
Very interesting. Now, what's another way to avoid verbal conflict?
Another really good strategy is to state things positively instead of negatively. Recently, I was sitting in as a consultant at a school board meeting. Right at the start, the chair gave instructions in an arbitrary way. "We're on a very tight schedule. Make your reports brief. No one will be allowed to take more than 3 minutes. And no one will be allowed to interrupt the person who's speaking. No one will ask any questions." It wasn't a good meeting. You could have cut the silence with a knife.
How could the chair have done better?
He told them to make their reports brief, but he could have asked them to try to limit their reports to 3 minutes. He said no one would be allowed to interrupt the person who was speaking. He also said no one would ask any questions. He had a rigid manner, spoke with a self-righteous tone, and basically treated the attendees like school children instead of like adults. That's a good way to inhibit any kind of productive discussion. He could have asked them to hold their questions for the duration of the speeches. The bottom line is this: you don't have to sugarcoat your statements, but people will respond much better if you put a positive spin on things.
All right. Thanks, Ellen. We'll be back shortly after this commercial break.
Unit 21, page 367. Exercise 7. Listening.
We're back, everyone. Once again, I'm Ann Ness, and my guest today is communication expert Ellen Sands, who is telling us about ways to minimize verbal conflict. Ellen, you've talked about active listening and about stating things positively instead of negatively. What's another way to improve communication?
A third way involves speaking about yourself instead of about the other person, especially in a conflict situation. That means focusing on how the other person's statements are affecting you. It does not involve returning anger for anger.
How about giving us an example?
Sure. Here's a situation from my own private practice. A few months back, two sisters, whom I'll call Rosa and Alicia, came to me for help with a family dispute. Their mother had died, and they were arguing about dividing up the family estate.
Oh, dividing up an estate. That can be tough to manage.
Yes, and since their mother hadn't left a will, the situation was particularly complicated. It wasn't long before Rosa and Alicia were at each other's throats. Rosa said, "Alicia, you always got your own way because you were Mom's favorite." Alicia was clearly hurt by the criticism and angrily responded, "The problem is that you're a very selfish person." After that, it just got worse.
What would have been a better way to handle this?
Well, Rosa was the aggressive one, but it takes two people to make an argument. Alicia should have talked about how Rosa had made her feel instead of attacking Rosa back. She could have said something like, "You know, Rosa, you really hurt my feelings when you said that." Then she could have said, "I felt really disrespected." You'd be surprised how much statements like this can diffuse anger and help in a conflict situation.
Very interesting. All right, we're going to take another break and then hear more from Ellen Sands. Stay with us.
Unit 22, page 374. Read.
How would our world be different? What causes people to make remarkable discoveries or invent remarkable devices? How would our world be different if certain remarkable discoveries or inventions hadn't been made? The experiences of Isaac Newton and Henry Ford, both of whom showed great determination, can shed some light on these questions. Sometimes chance plays a role in scientific and technological advancement. In 1666, according to legend, young scientist Isaac Newton was sitting under an apple tree in his orchard. He looked up and saw an apple fall to the ground. This was a major historical moment. We could say that if Newton hadn't seen the apple fall, he wouldn't really have understood the force of gravity, and he probably wouldn't have formulated his famous theories. The apple did fall, though, and Newton did see it. Determined to understand this force, he theorized that two objects attract and mutually influence each other. If an apple, for example, falls from a tree, the much greater mass of the earth will attract and pull the apple to the ground. Isaac Newton's theory of gravitation was first sparked by a chance occurrence, but it was realized through his strong dedication and determination. After the scientist's death, his French author friend, Voltaire, said that Newton had never had any deep relationships with other people. Newton never married, perhaps feeling that if he started a family, he wouldn't be able to devote his life to achieving his real passion, the advancement of science. Newton may even have died for science before his time. Upon his death, toxic levels of mercury were found in his body. If he hadn't exposed himself to mercury in chemical experiments, he might have lived much longer than he did. It seems clear that if Newton hadn't made such sacrifices, he might not have had such a powerful impact on the development of mathematics, optics, and physics during the next centuries. If it hadn't been for Newton, we might not have many of the inventions that characterize our time, e.g., high-powered telescopes, airplanes, rockets, or the space station. Fast forward to 1908, when Henry Ford introduced his Model T Ford in Detroit, an action which was to change the world. Ford didn't invent the car. That accomplishment is generally attributed to German inventor Carl Benz. However, Ford was instrumental in bringing the automobile to the masses. Before 1908, cars were complicated machines, difficult to operate and repair, and expensive to own. Ford utilized the assembly line in his factories to efficiently produce an automobile that the average person could afford to buy and maintain. In his own way, Ford was as determined as Newton. Before he succeeded as an automaker, Ford had persuaded wealthy businessmen to finance two other businesses to produce horseless carriages, i.e., cars. Both businesses failed, but Ford was undeterred. In 1903, he started a new business, once again gaining the support of wealthy financiers. This time, his business was wildly successful. If Ford hadn't persisted, the revolutionary Model T might never have been produced. Today, the car is ubiquitous. But what would our world be like if Ford hadn't been so determined to make it available to the common person? There would probably be fewer cars on the roads and fewer, if any, traffic jams. Car ownership might still be restricted to the wealthy. We probably wouldn't have as many suburbs as we presently do, because the car makes it possible to live outside central cities. We can argue that if Ford hadn't marketed his Model T and made it widely available, someone else would have. But the result would have been vastly different. Ford was in the right place at the right time, and his efforts have changed the world. There are those today who wish that Ford had never popularized the gasoline-burning auto. There are even those who wish gasoline-powered cars would just disappear. If only all cars were electric-powered, they might say. The car is here to stay, though, and it will continue to evolve. Inventor Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. This seems an oversimplification. We might restate Edison's idea in this way. Genius is 33% inspiration, 33% perspiration, and 34% motivation. If Newton, Ford, and countless others hadn't been determined to forge ahead with their enterprises, today's world would undoubtedly be quite different. Will the efforts of future innovators be as far-reaching? That remains to be seen.
Unit 22, page 387, Exercise 7. Listening.
Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to talk about computers. So my first question is this. What would you do if your computer wasn't working? Would you run virus protection software? Andrea?
Yes, I would. If a computer isn't working, the chances are it has a virus or a bug.
Ah, yes, a bug. What does that mean? If your computer has a bug, is there an actual insect inside the computer? Diego?
No, I don't think so.
Maybe there is, sometimes. I think I've read that way back when computers were first being built, some people actually found a bug in a computer, and that's how the word got started.
How can that be? I know that a bug is a glitch, some kind of programming error.
You're right, but why is it called a bug? Does anyone know? Andrea?
I just looked this up on my phone. It says that a lady named Grace Harper came up with the term.
Well, people think that she invented the term, but she didn't. She only used it in a report. If the term bug hadn't already been invented, Harper would never have used it.
Well, if Harper didn't invent the term bug, who did?
We don't know who invented the term. It's been in use for at least a century, but it used to mean something like monster, and it referred to a general technological problem with a machine.
So, who was Grace Harper then?
Here's the rest of the story. Back in 1947, Rear Admiral Grace Harper was a military expert in computing. Harvard University had a Mark II calculator, which was a kind of primitive computer. It wasn't working correctly, so investigators decided to open the machine up to see what was causing the problem. And guess what? They found a moth inside that could have been causing the problem.
So there was a real bug in the computer.
Yes, there was. At that time, the Navy was working closely with Harvard University, so Grace Harper wrote a report about the incident. She was given credit for creating the terms bug and debug. She never claimed that she'd invented those terms, but she started using them to refer to computer problems, and other people did too. So I guess Harvard and the military should get the credit for starting to use the word the way we use it today.
Unit 23, page 392. Read.
Ask Rosa.
Dear Rosa, Hank and I were best friends in high school, so when he suggested we room together in college, I thought it was a great idea. Wrong. Had I known what a slob Hank really is, I never would have agreed to room with him. We have a small suite that has become a pigsty because Hank thinks it's beneath him to wash a dish and is convinced the floor is the place to keep clothes. Whenever I talk to Hank about it, he just says, "Hey Jason, you need to lighten up. You're too tense." I'm no neat freak, but I do prefer a semblance of order. I still like Hank and want to stay friends, but I'm feeling more like a doormat every day. What would you recommend I do? Jason.
Dear Jason, no one should have to feel like a doormat. Unfortunately, there's no easy solution to your problem. I can suggest 3 potential remedies. First, Hank may be unaware there's actually a problem. If so, ask him if he really likes having dirty dishes and bugs all over the place. If he doesn't, he might lend his muscles and help with the cleaning. There's a chance this approach will work, but if not, remedy 2 is teaching him how to clean up. He just may not be used to it. You might suggest he do the dishes one day and you the next. Should that not work, remedy 3 is to remind him you both have a right to a reasonably clean and orderly living space, and you feel your rights are being violated. Sometimes an appeal to a person's sense of fairness can do the trick. Whatever you do, it's important that Hank not feel criticized. Otherwise, he'll probably become resistant, so be moderate in your suggestions. Good luck, Rosa.
Dear Rosa, Jim and I have been married for over 4 years now, and our marriage would be ideal were it not for the overbearing personalities of some of the people in his family. I love Jim dearly, but there are times when I feel like I'm married to his family members as well. They often drop in without letting me know they're coming, and at this point, I'm spending more time with them than with Jim. Besides that, his sister Hannah constantly bombards me with requests that I do favors for her. For example, she insists I take her grocery shopping every week, even though she has her own car and is perfectly capable of doing this on her own. Even worse, his cousin Helen often requests I lend her money. At this point, Helen owes me about $750, but if I mention it, she just says, "Carla, you know I'm good for it. I just need to get some bills paid off, and then I can pay you back." Rosa, I feel like I'm being manipulated by his family members. I know how important Jim's family is to him, but I'm at the end of my rope. What would you suggest that I do? Carla.
Dear Carla, you're experiencing lack of privacy. one of the most common problems faced by young married people, so don't feel you're alone. The problem sounds quite fixable. My guess is that your husband probably doesn't know what's going on and doesn't realize the depth of your frustration. Here's my advice. Have a heart-to-heart talk with Jim. First, tell him you appreciate his family, but also feel you and he need more time alone together, and that without that time together, your relationship won't be able to develop as it should. Suggest these people call before they come over. Also, tell him you want to be helpful, but you feel his sister and cousin are asking too much of you. I'll bet he'll be willing to speak to them privately, or at least mediate between you and Helen. When you're telling Jim about this, of course, it's essential that you not criticize his family members. That would probably cause resentment. Just give an honest statement of your feelings. With a little bit of extra communication with Jim, you can right the ship and make your marriage stronger. Good luck, and hang in there. Rosa.
Unit 23, page 405. Exercise 8. Listening.
Hello?
Hey, Marge, it's Nancy. Got a moment? I need some advice.
Sure. What's the problem?
My daughter Amanda called an hour or so ago and asked me to babysit. When I said no at first, she almost demanded I do it. I gave in and said yes, but I wish I hadn't. Had I known she was calling about that, I wouldn't have answered the phone. How can I make her stop treating me like this? What would you suggest?
Has this been happening a lot?
Yes, it has. It's the 5th time in 3 weeks. The last time it happened, I was feeling sick. I wound up having to call and insist she come and pick up the kids early.
Did she?
Yes, but she was mad. I love her and my grandchildren, but enough is enough.
What's her problem anyway? Why is she asking that you babysit all the time?
Well, both she and Stan have strange work schedules. She's been working overtime.
They seem pretty well off to me. Why is Amanda working so much?
She and Stan want to buy another house. Personally, I think she's been neglecting the children. It's important that she pay more attention to those kids.
Well, this isn't a matter of survival. They have a nice enough home already. I suggest you call her back and tell her you've changed your mind. You're not her slave. Lay down the law. With a little firmness, you can get Amanda to take responsibility for herself.
Thanks, Marge. That was my thought, too. I just wanted some support.
Absolutely. You raised one family. You shouldn't have to raise another.